What is going on, YouTube? Tonight I am coming to you with a video that I just picked up from the hill. It wasn't something that I was actually going to share with you guys. I was just kind of watching it for my own, my mental stability, I guess. But then I caught something in it that was like, oh yeah, we definitely got to watch this. So I don't want to delay because, I don't want to interrupt the video any more than I have to, but I do want to say welcome to the train wreck. I hope you enjoy what you're going to see. I will not be interrupting this video throughout its entirety. At the end, we'll come back together and kind of discuss and see if you notice some of the things that I noticed as well. So I'm going to jump right over here right now. And like I said, we'll get her started.
Dr. Peter McCullough went on the Joe Rogan Experience and asserted that the pandemic response was being executed before COVID hit the U.S. Let's watch.
So you believe this is a premeditated thing that they were doing. So they realized that in order to get people enthusiastic about taking this vaccine, the best way to do that was to not have a protocol for treatment.
It's not just my idea. Now it's completely laid out by the book by Dr. Pam Popper, the book recently published by Peter Breggin, COVID-19 and the Global Predators, We Are the Prey. I wrote one of the introductions. Dr. Leafleet and Dr. Vladimir Lysenko wrote the other introductions. These books are basically nonfiction. They have 1,000 citations in the Breggin book showing how it was coordinated and planned. Now Bobby Kennedy has his book out, The Real Anthony Fauci. I'm the most mentioned physician in that book. I can tell you that if you want to find the evidence that Moderna was working on the vaccine before the virus ever emanated out of the lab, if you wanted to find the collusions and the operations between the Gates Foundation and Gavi and CEPI and Pfizer and Moderna and the vaccine manufacturers and the Wuhan lab and the National Institutes of Health and Ralph Barrick and University of North Carolina at Chapel Hill and how all this was organized, if you want to see the Johns Hopkins planning seminar called the SPARS pandemic in 2017, where they had a symposium. People showed up. They wrote up their symposium findings. They published this. It says it's going to be a coronavirus. It's going to be related to MERS and SARS. It's going to come over here to the United States. It's going to shut down cities and frighten people. There's going to be confusion regarding a drug, hydroxychloroquine or ivermectin. And we're going to utilize all that in order to railroad the population into mass vaccination. It's laid out in the Johns Hopkins SPARS pandemic training seminar. The only thing they got wrong was the year. They said it was going to be 2025. Instead, it landed a few years early.
My name is Aaron. I've been with Facebook for 2 years now. I'm a product policy manager.
A lot of responsibility, especially on.
So McCullough also claimed that therapeutics had been approved to treat infected patients. Had therapeutics been approved to treat infected patients, 85% of deaths could have been prevented, but that suppression of early treatments was ultimately to promote mass vaccination. I haven't gotten a chance to actually watch this entire interview yet, the full entire interview. I don't know if you guys had a chance, Robbie and Ryan, if you guys had a chance to watch this, but really interesting. I'm not sure what I think about what he's asserting about this being kind of a planned thing. I know a lot of people have thought that. There is a lot of interesting, parallels with some of these kind of, when you watch these sort of, they have those planned conventions that are like, okay, what would we do in the event of? And a lot of it looks like what's happening now. I've always kind of took it as, well,
the war games.
So, well, I always took it as this was what they, it's kind of like disaster preparedness, right? When they say, okay, an earthquake's coming, what do? Well, you stand in the doorways. I guess you could look at the manual and say, oh my gosh, they planned the earthquake. They knew it was coming because everybody stood in the doorway like the pamphlet said, but it's like everybody stood in the doorway because they were preparing for an emergency. So I've kind of thought of it maybe like that.
Right. We had the plague. We had Black Death. We had the Spanish flu in 1919. Then we had MERS, SARS, bird flu. Like, we have entire agencies that are organized around defending against pandemics. Like, a pandemic is not a thing that just showed up in 2019.
Right.
And the world is out of control. The world is scary. And so for people who are frightened, you have these people like McCullough who come to them and say, actually, it's not out of control. Don't worry. In fact, it's all being controlled by Bill Gates and Johns Hopkins and the military in North Carolina and Moderna. And they got together and they planned all of this because it makes people feel better if they can feel like at least somebody's planning this.
Right.
Because then they're not just living in the chaotic, atomized modern world that they're living in. And so they run for comfort. And McCullough will be a little bit careful about exactly how he puts it, but the people who receive it are like, oh, Bill Gates did this at Johns Hopkins.
Right. And I don't know this guy very well, so I just looked up his Wikipedia page, and he apparently, has said things that are not true, like a lot. Like,
right.
he was saying hydroxychloroquine works.
And here's a warning to people. Here's a warning to people. Anytime somebody tells you how many citations there are in something,
yeah, that is a red flag. That is a
run very far away.
I agree completely. Yeah, that's a.
But I don't know if we
should.
I don't know if we should be trusting necessarily Wikipedia when they label people misinformation. So I don't think that's fair. I think they've been labeling a lot of people who've been giving actual true information as misinformation.
I think Wikipedia does that. I agree with you about like Twitter, and Wikipedia is generally pretty accurate. But so what I was going to say though, yeah, the idea, I agree with you, Ryan. The idea that it's this planned conspiracy is not right. But the idea he's getting at there, that a lot of people could have been saved, that deaths could have prevented if there were more therapeutics hitting the market faster, if there had been tests hitting the markets faster, even if the vaccines were special, that's all correct. Right. But it wasn't a purposeful conspiracy to harm people or to herd them like sheep or cattle or whatever compliant animal down some other path. It's just the incompetence of our federal bureaucrats. It's their laziness, their incompetence, the kind of not benign, but not purposeful, just corruption of the system, of the people. It took so long to get all this stuff, and that has resulted in lots of unnecessary deaths. We're going to have unnecessary deaths between now and Paxlovid hitting the markets because of incompetence.
Well,
so it's just not a conspiracy.
Okay, in fairness to Dr. McCullough, the hour that I did watch, I didn't get to watch the whole 2.5 hours, but the hour that I did watch, he did say that the reason why the therapeutics weren't getting out there, because Rogan asked him, do you think that was like a conspiracy to get people mass vaccinated, why they weren't allowing for more data research on the therapeutics that they were demonizing, such as hydroxychloroquine and ivermectin and others that were out there? And he said, no. From his inside sources, they were just incompetent. The powers that be, the health officials, they just weren't, they work for us. They're our health authorities. They should be studying things on our behalf, and they weren't. They just kind of put all the eggs in the vaccine basket and sort of ignored anything else that could have potentially saved lives. And that is pretty scandalous. I mean, like I said, the rest of the stuff he talks about, I'm not willing to just discount it like you guys are. I'm willing to look at, I don't see any evidence of that happening. I also don't see evidence of it not happening yet. So I'm willing to say it's possible what he's claiming. But, I think everything that anybody claims is somewhat possible until we prove it for sure to not be. But, a lot of his, but I do think the biggest point he made during this segment that I watched was that why weren't the health authorities doing more to help the people that already got COVID? They were so focused, and we've been so focused during this entire pandemic on vaccinate, 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 and it didn't help the millions of us who got COVID when there were no vaccines available. So and the millions of people who are now getting it, are vaccinated. So what do we do?
Yeah, they manipulated the different treatment therapies that they could to, they put people on ventilators. They did this was a very tricky and tough disease. It first appeared that it was mostly just respiratory. Then it turned out actually it may be much more vascular than it is respiratory. And if hydroxychloroquine and ivermectin legitimately worked and could be demonstrated to work, doctors would be prescribing it. We understand now what happened with ivermectin. Ivermectin, basically deals with worms. And so when they were giving it to people in Bangladesh and Africa and in a lot of places,
it was helping. It was helping because it was killing off the worms they had, which made their body better able to fight COVID. So it did in a weird way work, but it's not like if you prescribe it to someone in the US.
That was this huge mystery because they're like, we're seeing clinical studies here that shows that it actually does have some effectiveness in, but yet it doesn't have effectiveness in the United States. What is the problem here? And so a lot of people were like, oh, obviously it's a conspiracy.
Right.
No, it turns out we don't have a lot of worms here in the United States. And so
we don't know for sure that it was killing the worms and that's why it was helping.
We do know it kills worms. Like that's what ivermectin does. It's very good at it. Didn't the guy win a Nobel Prize for it?
But I don't think we can make an assertion.
Why are people so confident that the thing beats COVID, but we're not confident that it kills worms? It's
No,
actually
we're
built to
confident it
kill
kills
worms.
worms. Wait. We're confident it kills worms. That's what ivermectin does. It won a Nobel
Right.
Prize for that.
So if
because
it kills
cures
the worms,
blindness.
people are going
We
to feel
don't
better.
know if the reason why people were getting better with COVID had worms. I think it's like, how can you mass assert that they all had worms?
Because we have studied those populations and we know that the concentration of people with worms is extremely high.
I think it's a pretty plausible theory. But I mean, the point is, there people like McCullough. They have said things that have not borne out. But that's also true of a lot of mainstream sources of information about COVID. So I think some people who are a little bit more on the fringe, they get frustrated. Like, why are we being labeled misinformation when, like, the New York Times is casting doubt on boosters in an effort to keep masking in place forever. Like, I completely believe they're doing that. The New York Times is dedicated to that project, or at least its lead COVID reporter is, and they deserve criticism for that. But then also that doesn't mean that, like, no, just all mainstream sources are wrong about everything, and you should only listen to fringe people, because the fringe people have also been wrong about a lot. We've all been wrong, no matter how much level of respectability we get or deserve. We have all been wrong.
Right, and what? Okay,
about some
we're
things.
Told we got to go. Okay,
all right. Tomorrow on Rising, Nomiki Konst and Emily Jashinsky.
All right, guys, that's enough for that. Now listen. So this, I did pre-watch this, because honestly, like I said, I just did this for my entertainment. And if you don't know what's going on with the Joe Rogan story, don't believe anything that you have heard. Go check it out for yourself. Get on his website, read the actual story. There was a whole barrage of things he was prescribed by his MD. They are human grade prescriptions of everything that he took. And there was a CNN went really crazy, hammering down that he was taking a horse dewormer. That is just one application of it. If you take Xanax, you're taking a dog sedative, because if you don't know it, your dog can get a prescription for Xanax as well. It's the same mentality, but they don't want to make that connection because CNN didn't want you to know that Pfizer, their primary sponsor for their news programs, is coming out with an ivermectin clone of their own. So they don't want anything good being said about that Nobel Prize winning product, because they're coming out with their own copy. Nothing to see here. You shouldn't be worried about billions of dollars shifting into their pockets during all this entire process. And so one of the things that I wanted to bring out was that, one, these two guys are morons. I've watched The Hill just a few times. I've done a video or two that I've reacted to them. I didn't realize how stupid these guys were. Is that really how you think, or how you don't think? You don't think that a for-profit corporation might possibly say something that may not be true, even though the largest lawsuit in history, $2.3 billion, was against Pfizer for making false claims. Did we all forget about that? You don't think these people aren't pieces of crap? The vaccine, well, the minute that hit the market, research stopped doing anything but pushing towards the vaccine. Do you want to know why that is? Is because government agencies, the FDA, that controls the drugs and the foods that we're allowed to have in our body, they are funded by the people they monitor. Do you know, that's basically like if the police department went to the criminals and got their funding from the criminals. You're supposed to be watching them. They're not supposed to be controlling your purse strings, and that's how it works. So if you don't know how that works, just go look it up. Go look at the FDA up. Get on the internet, not Wikipedia, because it's editable. You do know that, right? The dude says that you can trust Wikipedia. If you're a crackhead, if you're a few IQ short of a sentient human being, then rely on Wikipedia. You ever heard of Encyclopedia Britannica? You know, there's still dozens and dozens of encyclopedias that are vetted. You know, they're referenced, they're peer reviewed. They have more than one person writing the content, and you're not likely to get much of an agenda. Where Wikipedia, you can edit people's Wikipedia pages. They're missing citations, or they're false citations. And then the one guy says, whenever someone says, tells you how many citations they have run. Well, that's someone who's never read a peer-reviewed document. Did he graduate from college? I thought he was a journalist. You know, they may not have that process, but in science, facts, and evidence, not opinion, in evidence, there is a peer reviewing process that has gone through where other people who are also experts in the field review your methodology to make sure you're not full of poop. Unlike the news media, where he can get on here and literally, by the way, in case you didn't notice it, he didn't watch the freaking the segment. He didn't watch, neither one of the guys watched 1 second of the segment. They only saw what she presented. And then started on basically saying that you can always trust everybody and there's never been a conspiracy throughout all time. But Jon Stewart would disagree with you, and Russell Brand would disagree with you, and Bill Maher would disagree with you. But no, see, that's the problem is when you only listen to one news source, one source of information, you can get pulled down the road like this because you might actually trust him. Well, I don't trust him as far as I could throw him at this point. Either one of them. If it wasn't for Kim sitting there going, well, you guys, I mean, did you see her? It's hysterical. I knew that was kind of her take anyway. And honestly, the next time that I review anything, it's not going to be from the Hill. It's going to be from her show because I don't need to listen to stupid. I'm surrounded by it. You know, that's just the world around me. So, all right, folks. So that's going to be it. If you got any questions or comments, feel free to leave them down below. If this is content that you enjoy, please like, share, and subscribe. I would greatly appreciate it. It actually does help. Gets me out in front of more eyes and then makes it easier and more fun to do stuff like this. If you ever have any questions or comments in the middle of a broadcast, feel free to throw them up in the chat. I'll get to them. I promise, absolutely promise. And I will see you all again in a few days. Now, we have holidays coming up, so I'm not exactly sure how much time I'm going to have to be able to get on here, but there is a possibility that tomorrow night, which is my birthday, that I might be going to see the new Spider-Man movie. So if I go see the new Spider-Man movie, as soon as I get back from the movie, I'm going to try my best to jump on here and do a quick first impressions of it, and then maybe get you excited. You guys might be able to see it over the holiday weekend. So, all right. Thanks for stopping in. Love you guys. See you next time.